is Gemara Yevamos Daf Chof Aleph. All the learning should be an incredible chashidach for Yochav and Miriam Bas Chaya Pesol Chana Bas Nechama Yisrael Chaim and Devar Shalom Lebizabah V'Gdalishem and Chaya. They should all find the Shidachagim Bekarev as well as the Schus Yeshua Solana Bas Shoshana Malka Yisrael Zelik Ben Yuta Rachel as well as Schus Ruach Shlema Shmuel Yisben Eved Shmuel Matilan Nafsos Ben Chlas and Nechama Bas Riva Bas Sheva Figa Bas Ashina Shira Chana Besoich Shar Chayli Yisrael. We're holding on the bottom of Chof Amid Beis. 2 lines from the Bradam, continuing the discussion of yesterday of Almana L'Kohen Gadol, the din in which we concluded. We thought we finally had an answer that when it's Efshir B'Chalitza, why would we say Asei Dechaleisa? It says the Gemara, it's not true, because we learned in the Bryce and Ba'alu Kanu. So we said to Yuft, and therefore it comes out that the reason that one should not do Yibam by Almana L'Kohen Gadol is indeed only a din d'Rabbanan, like Rava said, up above. And now says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom, what is the story? When a Kohen Gadol goes, he's not allowed to go and do Yibam to the Almana. What if he does? Says the Gemara, Itmar, Bias Kohen Gadol Ba'almana. What is the status of when a Kohen Gadol goes in a situation of Yibam, when Almana, a woman that was previously married, and her husband dies, of course, falls the Yibam to a Kohen Gadol, and he goes and he sleeps with her, he performs Yibam. What is the status right now? Explains the Gemara, Rav Yechon, Rav Lazar, one holds it doesn't do anything. The Sarah is not potter. But Chadamar, Poiteris, Arasa does potter up the Sarah as we turn over to Chav Aleph, Amid Aleph. Explains the Gemara. If it was a real Almana, a full-fledged Almana, an Almana in which there was Nisuin done, an Almana which is an Aseh, and Alois Aseh, everyone agrees that the Kohen Gadol sleeping with her does not pater up the tzara. Why? Simple. Ki pligi, and this is a good chazar from yesterday's daf. When do they argue? Ba'almana mina eirisin, when we have an almana that only did eirisin, only did the first stage of marriage, and therefore there's only a loisa say. Man damar paiteres, according to Man damar, that says that the act of bia, the act of yibum, does pater up the tzara, up the co-wife. Why? Because the asay of yibum pushes away the loisa say of Man Damar Einai by Dares Losi Asay V'Dachi Yes Loisa say why not? Kivon the Efshar B'Chalitza, like we saw yesterday and we started with today, because since there's a potential to get rid of it in another manner, you could do Chalitza, therefore we do not allow the Asay to be Doichan, the Loisa Asay. And therefore, even if he tries to, even if the Kohen Gadol does the Yibam, does sleep with her, it will not work. Ask the Gemara Meisvi, is that true? You're telling me because Efshir B'Chalitza, because you could have done Chalitza, therefore the act of Yibam will not do anything. Says the Gemara, 1 second, we learned yesterday in Ba'alu Kanu, a clear price that says, not like we said today, in Ba'alu Kanu. If they did an act of Bia, works, but you just told me not. Says the Gemara, you're right. It's a good question. Says the Gemara, should we say it's also a kasha on Rish Lakish? Why? Because Rish Lakish says that, because the Brisa says that the Yibam, the Asay, is only going to get rid of the Loisa say, even though there's going to be Chalitza. Whereas what did Rish Lakish say? Rish Lakish taught us yesterday that whenever there's an alternative, whenever there's a potential of Chalitza, the Asay will not be Lois Daiche. Rish Lakish says, no, this is not a kasha on Rish Lakish. Why not? Mitzvah. Says Rish Lakish, when do I say that when there's a potential elsewhere is only when the Mekayim a mitzvah, when the mitzvah is actually actualized, when the mitzvah is fulfilled. Avlahacha chalita b'makayim yibam of chiddush lav mitzvah he. A bomb drops Rish Lakish here in Daf Chav Aleph. We thought, or we think, there's 2 equal options, yibam or chalitza. Maybe we think yibam's a little bit better, maybe not. We already saw previously that if you don't have the right kavana, yibam is not better. But here says Rish Lakish, no, yibam b'makim chalitza, or I say better, chalitza b'makim yibam lav mitzvah he is not of the status of a mitzvah, and therefore Rish Lakish's klal, Rish Lakish's rule, in which Rish Lakish taught us that when there's a potential to do it without being daicha, would not apply in this case. Now, we go back to yesterday, in which we learned in the Mishnah something called shniyos, something called a din derabanan, secondary arayis. Secondary rayis, in which we learned you cannot do yibam on them. And the Mishnah taught us that what do you have to do? Chalitza. You can't do yibam, you have to do chalitza. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, remez, lishniyas min atayra minayin. And let's just, before we even continue, because we can have many answers, I think 4 in total, but let's hone in on the words of Rava. He said remez. It's hinted, it's alluded to in the Torah. Very clearly, he's not saying an explicit din da'oraisa, an explicit makar and source in the Torah, and he's not saying an explicit din da'rabana. It's somewhere in the middle. It's almost like an esmachta. It's a remiz. It's alluded to in the Torah. So says Rava, where do we find an allusion to this? It's a din da'rabana, like we said. So where do we find an allusion to this din da'rabana? Shenamar, the Torah says, all of these, hakel, or ha'el, actually, it just means these over here, did the anshe aretz, ha'el, kashos. When it says the word ha'el, it means, it refers to that which are bad. Kashos, hard. Mechlal dikarakis, that shows there must be something not so bad. Umayniu, what are the arayis that are not so bad? Shniyos. Ask the Gemara, my mashna the ha'el, lishna the kashu, I know the word ha'el refers to something difficult. Techsev, as Eli aretz lokach, the pasuk says, in the mighty of the land, and Nebuchadnezzar took away. We see el, eleh, is referred to as kash, referred to as mighty. Says the Gemara, lema apaligi to Rav Levi. They seemingly is arguing on Rav Levi. Why? Damar Rav Levi, kash ancient al midos, shel midos. Listen to this line, incredible line. Says Rav Levi, ancient of midos, of weights in business, is kasha, is more difficult than yoiser me ancient shel harayis. Incredible. Should take a moment to let that digest. Its own acts unlawfully, dishonestly in business. It's even worse than harayis. Why? Shezen nemer ben el, v'zen nemer ben eleh. Says the Gemara, says Rav Levi, we learn it from a pasuk. Since it says el, this one says eleh. But says the Gemara's kasha is that we see obviously that el is not so bad. Eleh is worse. Explains the Gemara, el kasha, the eleh kasha me'el. No, your el is kasha. Just el is even worse. But it's not a kasha. El is also bad. So you brought a source that shniyos is learned out from the pasuk that there's el, there's these, and there's something underneath is true. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Gabi Arais nami yoksiv ela. On Levi, Rav Levi, what do you mean by Arais? It also says ela. Hulemute midos. There comes to exclude midos mikares. That ela is only mean these. These have kares, but the midos do not have kares. Says the Gemara, great, but if Arai says kares, midas does not has kares, then what's the chumrah? Says the Gemara, startling line, honey efshar b'tshuva, honey loy efshar b'tshuva. You cannot do tshuva on these. Just to explain for a moment, why can't you do tshuva? So, the many different explanations, but the simple explanation here being that you cannot do tshuva because you do not know all the people that you stole from. This is a classical case of an avera that you did it to the public, and anytime you do an avera to the public, how do you pay back? You don't know every single person that came into your store and bought from you with these unlawful weights. That's the reason why it's a dreadful and terrible averas, and many learn out from here. You see the chaimer, the severity of an avera that is done to the public in particular. Because anytime there's an avera done in public, it's efshar, it's impossible to do tshuva. Source number 1, that there's a concept of shniyos for the fact that we see el, that these are kasha, must be something underneath them. Continues the Gemara, Rav Yudah Amar, a second source, me'acha, from here 4 lines into the white lines, va'oizen v'chiker tikin v'shalem, Shlomo HaMelech in Kala says he made oizen, he made handles and sought out and arranged the mishalem harbe, many proverbs. V'amar Ula, and Ula explains what does this pasuk mean. Amar Rav Elazar, koidem shabbat Shlomo hisa Torah daim lechlifa. Before Shlomo HaMelech came, you know what Torah was like? It was like a basket. She'ein la aznayim, it had no handles. Ad sheba Shlomo v'asla manayim, it made aznayim. This is referring to the gedarim, the handle, the way to hold on to something. The geder, the out stays away from there, and therefore that's what we're learning out the source for. Shniyos, of source they have to be even further away than the arayis, than the strict letter of the law. Rav Aisha Amar Me'acha, third source, says Rav Aisha Paru al Ta'aver Boi. Sitei me'alav of avar, make it larger. Al ta'avar boy, don't transgress. Sitei me'alav, veer away from it. V'avar, and then pass on. We see that you should expand the yisurin to stay far away from that which is also. Amar Rav Ashi explains, it's comparable to ladam mishamer pardes. You're watching your field, mishamer mibachot. You watch from the outside, the bird's eye view. Kula mishtamer, the whole field is watched. Mishamer mifnim, if you go inside, shalafana mishtamer, right next to you can watch. But shalachrav outside ain't a mishtamer, is not watch. And that is the shniya, it's the guarding to the Torah. Ask the Gemara one second about the Rav Ashi Beduzi. No, it's not a good comparison. Hasam, in the case of the garden, shalafanam yemishtamer. When you're inside the garden, at least you can see right around you. But says Rav Ashi, says the Gemara, a startling statement which gives us chizik in order to make gedarim, in order to stay so far away from Aveira. Hacho v'hiri lav shniyos. If not for the fact there were shniyos, if not there was the Rabbanan, and of course is representative in a larger scale to all gedarim, all fences, all staying away from Aveiros. If not for the Shniya, says the Gemara, Paga be'erva gufa. Not only would you not stay away from the outside, but not even the inside. Nothing is watched. The whole thing is going to explode. And unfortunately, how often do we see such a thing when there's no gedarim, when there's no restrictions? Not only is the smaller derabbanans transgressed, but even the larger daraisas, that which from inside blows up as well. Rav Kana Amar, a fourth source and a final one. Mishmarti. You should watch my watching. Also, mishmarti. You have to make a mishmar as a guarding for my watching. Abaya, the Rav Yosef asks Abaya, oh, the Raisi, that's supposed to be the Raisa. Explains him why you're right. The Raisa appears Rabbanan. It's the Raisa that the Rabbanan explained. Says Gemara, one second, go to Taranami appears Rabbanan. El mit Rabbanan, Vikra Smachta Ba'alma. That goes back to what we started. We said that Rabbi said it's a remez. It's an Asmachta Minatayr. And those are all the sources for the din of the Mishnah. The Shniyos, the secondary Arayis, which we're about to explore right now, are all cases which you have to Chalitza, not even to stay far away from the root Arava. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. Now that we know the source, Mahem Shniyos. What are Shniyos? What are these cases? These secondary arayas in which we learned you have to chalitza na'ibam. Explains the Gemara, Mahem Shniyos, Eim imai, your mother's mother, ve'eim aviv, and your father's your mother's mother and the mother of your father. Eishes avi aviv, and the wife of your father's father, your grandfather. Veishes avi ima, and the wife of the father of your mother. Veishes achiav, and the wife of your brother of your father, minaim, from the mother. Veishes achiav minav. Vikalas benoi, and the daughter-in-law of your son. Vikalas bita, and the daughter-in-law of your daughter. Those are all cases of shniyos. Now, what are cases which are not shniyos? Cases which are mutter, umutter adam, and a person is allowed be'ishes chamiv, with his father-in-law's wife, ube'ishes chargoi, with the wife of his wife's son, ve'aser be'bas chargo, but he's forbidden with the daughter of his wife's son. V'chargoi mutter, v'ishtai ubitai, and the wife's son is mutter to the stepfather's wife and his daughter. V'ishes chargoi, oimeres lo ani muteres l'cha, ubiti asur l'cha. Mutter, my daughter is asur. Says the Gemara, those are two categories, two different cases of isurim of shniyos and eterim from shniyos. Ask the Gemara, 1 second, bas chargoi, the daughter of your wife's son is a din daraisa. How do I know? The Torah daughter says bas abinav es bas bita. Clearly a pasuk that your son's daughter, your daughter's daughter. So why are you telling me that it's only a shniya? It's a din darabana that you have to do chalitza and ayibam. We see it's a clear din daraisa. Explains the Gemara. You know why? Mishum the Kwailim is niseifa. You're right. It really is a din daraisa. But because we wanted to write in the seifa, eishes chargoi meres lani mutares chabiti asur l'cha, that she says, "I'm mutar, my daughter is asur." Even though she's really also the Raisa, still so dude, on Reish Nami Bas Chargai, we said the case of the Reish, even though it's true, it is a din the Raisa. Ask the Gemara, true, this is true, Nami Tema. Why don't we list the same case by the father-in-law's wife that he can say the same thing? She can say the same thing, excuse me. I'm mutter, my daughter is also. Explains the Gemara. Why not? Why? The Avia Achais Ishtoi. Explains the Gemara. Habsikale, halop psikale. This is clear cut. It goes on forever. Halop psikale. Whereas the daughter of the father-in-law's wife is not clear cut. There are cases where it can be mutter, therefore it does not say it. So this is the start of the list of shniyos that here on the Yisurim. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav. Says Rav, now we're going to get some limitations. Arba noshim yeshlan hefsik. 4 women amongst the shniyos, yeshlan hefsik, there's a boundary, there's a stop. Nokid Rav Yodei Tlas, and Rav listed 3. Ishes achia aim min ha'av, veishes achia av min ha'aim, v'kalosai, and the daughter-in-law. Now, I'll just point out, don't get bothered. We already know daughter-in-laws in Issa Daraisa. The Gemara is going to ask that in one moment. Those are 3 that Rav listed. Uziri Moisev Av Ishes Avi Imai. End of these 4 cases in which there is a limit. And Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak, you want to try to remember this. Simanach Diluye de Rav, the secondary Erva is above the generation of Rav, and we'll leave it at that. Says the Gemara of Rav Maitem Lo Chashav Lo Chashav Le. Rav and Zeiri. Rav said 3 cases. Zeiri said a 4th. Why doesn't Rav say the case of Zeiri? Mechlaf Ale Beishes Avi Avim. And now we're going to start to understand the impetus. What is the reason for the shniya? He says, Rav, you know I didn't list Ziri's case because it could be confused with Ishes Avi Aviv, one's father's wife, the grandfather's wife, and because of that, it's going to be Aser La'il Navad, as we'll see in a moment. Uzi'iri says, no, you're not going to confuse it. La'asam Shchiach, Va'azel, Lach L'Shchiach, Va'azel. Over there, you go regularly to visit the father, but you don't regularly go visit the mother's family. Therefore, there's no concern that you're going to confuse them. Before we go into the reason of the Shniyos, ask the Gemara, the Kasha we spoke out, Kalasai, the daughter-in-law, as we turn over to Chaval from Abeis, Doraisi, that's an Issa Doraisa. So why are you listing it? Why does Rav say this is one of the Shniyos? Answers Gemara, you're right. Ema Kalas a Binoi. It means your son's daughter-in-law doesn't mean your daughter-in-law. Your daughter-in-law is, you're right, is an Erva De'orais, is a biblical prohibition. But your son's daughter-in-law, the granddaughter-in-law, that's going to be an Isser Dirabanan. Says Gemara, really? V'kala has been no yesh lahafsik. What was Rav's rule? That these are ones that don't go forever. In the original case of Shniyas, which you're about to see now, they are also, and it goes all the way up. The grandfather's wife, and the great-grandfather's wife, and the great-great-grandfather's wife, it's going to go, never stop, will always be usher, as Shniyas always require Chalitza and Ayibam. But in these 4 cases, there's a hefsek, there's a stop. Said the Gemara, really, is the son's daughter-in-law really have a stop? V'atanya kalasai, we learned in a Braisa, daughter-in-law, Erva, kalasai is an erva, kalas binai is a shniya. V'chenat oimer bibinai uben binai ad soiv kol adayrais. As the Gemara, we see clearly in a braysa that ben kalasai, your son's daughter-in-law, is a regular shniya, is a regular secondary erva, in which what goes on forever and ever and ever. So why are you listing it as one of the cases in which Rav is teaching a yesh la hefsek? It has a stop. No, it doesn't. We clearly see it goes like Vaed. Answers the Gemara, Ella Ema, you know what we have to say? Kalas Bitoi, your daughter's daughter-in-law. That's a case that has a hefsek, that's a case that's going to have a stop. The Omar, Rav Chista, Milsa, Megava, Rava, Shmuel, he says, Rav Chista, I heard this from a great man. Umanu, and who is that great man? Rav Ami. Layasru Kala Elbamne Kala. We only answer a Kala because of a Kala. We only answer a daughter-in-law because of a daughter-in-law. Now that seems like a little bit of a tongue twister, but let's continue in the story. V'amru li, and says Rav Ami, it says Rav Chista, excuse me, and they said to me, the Kaldoi, which are the astrologers, Milafna Havos. They said to me, you're going to be a great teacher. Amina. So I said to myself, says Rav Chisda, Igaver Rabba Havina, if the astrologers are telling me that I'm going to be a great Talmid Chacham, Azra Midaite. So I'm going to explain with my own das what's going on in this statement of Loi Amsru Kala Elabim Kala. The daughter-in-law is only usher because of the daughter-in-law. And if the astrologers meant that I'm going to be the teacher of children, Ashayl Yamir Rabbanan, I'll ask the Rabbanan, they come to Yeshiva, I'll ask them, what does this statement of Loi Asru Kala Elabim Kala mean? Says Rav Chisda, Hashta Savarta Midati. Now let me explain with my own das what this means. Loi Asru Kala as a bitoi, the Kala is bitoi, the daughter's daughter, not Loi Asru Kala, not every daughter-in-law, but the daughter's daughter is not forbidden. Elo Mishom Kalas binoi. Now everything makes a lot of sense. And let's understand all the levels. Kalas, your daughter-in-law, is a daraisa. Kalas binoi, your son's daughter-in-law is a shniya, is the secondary isser, which we just learned, goes Leilam Vayed forever and ever and ever, will always be a secondary erva, will always require chalitza, not yibam. Kalas bitoi, your daughter's daughter-in-law, that's going to be something that yesh, law, hefsik, that's going to be something that's going to stop. Amar le Abaya l'Rava, says Abaya to Rava, Azbar l'cha, I'll explain to you, ki on kalasa debei bar tzisai, Rababa amar ki on kalasa debei Rababa bar Abba, Rav Asher amar ki on kalasa debei Mari bar Isik. And these are all cases in which there was both the kalasai of the benoi and the kalasai of the bitoi, and that is the gezerah of the kalas of bitoi because of the kalas of benoi. Now, whether we need in one house to have both kalas benoi and kalas bitoi in order for this gezerah to work is a machlekes rishayim. There are those that learn from Rashi over here, in which they have to both be existent in the same time. It's not a regular gezerah in which happens everywhere. Others argue, but that is the story with kalasoi. Says the Gemara, Ibayilahu, two dots, about 15 lines down. First one line is Ibayilu, Eishes Achia Ein Min Mau. Ask the Gemara, the wife of your mother's brother from the mother, Mau, what is the din? Is that considered within these Shniyos La'arayis? We saw in the list on Amud Aleph that your wife's mother's paternal brother, your wife's mother's brother from the father, is Shniyos, is a secondary erva. So says the Gemara, is the wife's maternal brother also a secondary erva or not? Says the Gemara, what are the two stadim? Do we say Eishes Achia Av Mina'im, Veishes Achia Ein Mina'av? They're both similar, Dikatzarav, and therefore the Gazar and therefore the same Gezerah will apply whether it's your wife's mother's maternal or paternal brother, or I say better, paternal or maternal brother. But when there is no tzad of the father, or maybe Rav Safra, he gufa gzeira vanekom and nigzar gzeira. Says Rav Safra, no way. This is a gzeira. You can't make a double gzeira. Now, from here, we're really going to bring out the question, which is really begs to be asked all the way back from Amud Aleph. When we said shniyos, we said that these are dinei derabanan, secondary ervos, they go leilam vayed. And the question is, how could it go leilam vayed? It's a gzeira, it should end. So over here, that's indeed what Rav Safra says. But comes along Rava, and Rava says, Amar Rava, Adu kulu lav gzeira nenu. Says the Gemara, asks Rava, all of the shniyos are gzeiros. For example, imai is an erva, aim imai shniya, your mother's mother is secondary, and yet v'gazru al aim aviv, and we made a gzeira of the mother of your father, misham aim imai, because your mother's mother. Well, how could that be? It's a gzeira, it's one decree to another decree, which we know you're never allowed to say. But time amai, why do we do it? You know why we're allowed to do it? Because they're all called Devei Ima Rabasi. They're all labeled grandmother, Ima Rabasi. So it's all considered one level Gzeira. And the Gemara continues with another example. Eishes Aviv Arava. The next example is that Eishes Aviv in the Mishnah is a regular erva, your father's wife. Eishes avi aviv, the wife of your grandfather, is a shni, a secondary. V'gazral eishes avi imoi, your grandfather for the mother, mishum eishes avi aviv. V'taima mai, how can we make such a gzeira? It's gzeira, it's secondary, it's too far. Kula dvei abba rabba karle. You know why? Because all called dvei abba rabba, your grandfather's wife. Now a third example, eishes achiav min av. The wife of your Ishes Achiav, your father's brother, is an erva. Ishes Achiav minayim, that's from the father. When it comes from the mother, is a shniya, because Ishes Achiav minayim, Ishes Achiav minayim, but time amayim, Ishes the kula devei dai karulai. You know why? Because they're all called uncle's wife. So says the Gemara, you are busy asking on Rav Safra to gzeir l'gzeira, all of shniya is a gzeir l'gzeira, and yet, why are we allowed to do it? Because all have one name. So this should be no different. So what is the din in this case? So we go back to the question that we started off with, the question of the Yibaylu, the Ishes Achav, Ve'im min ha'im, what is the din? Says the Gemara Tashema, let's bring a raya. The Vichiyas, Rav Yehuda bar Shila, Amar Amri Marava, Kol Sheben Ekeva Erva. Now we get a rule, an equation, how to figure out what the shniyos are. Says the Gemara, Kol sheben nekeva erva. Anywhere where there's a nekeva, a female relationship in which there's an erva, and is there deraisa, then bizachar gazru al ishtoi. Whenever the male counterpart on the same level is a din derabanan, misham shniya. Rava explained, uklalu, is it really a rule? Are you telling me a klal? That's not true. Chamas erva. Your mother-in-law is an erva, and yet Isha's chamav mutaris. Bas chamas erva, and yet Isha's ben chamav mutaris. Bas chamav erva, Isha's ben chamav mutaris. Chargas erva, Isha's chargas mutaris. Bas chargas erva, Isha's ben chargas mutaris. So ask Rava, how you tell me such a rule? It does not stand the test of time. V'hod Rav Yehuda bar Shila asuye mai. So then, if that's true, so in Rav Yehuda bar Shila, a few lines up, said b'marava a klal, a general rule that whenever we have an Akeva Isser, the Zachar counterpart is forbidden. What does that come to include? My love, that it comes to include Asui, our case, beautiful. That's where it's going to come to include the Choshem Akeva Erva B'Zachar. Gazru, that there's going to be a gezira, yishtai misham shniya. So says the Gemara, seemingly this case, the case in which we started off trying to figure out the Eishes Achiaim, the wife of the mother's brother from the mother, if that has a din of a shniya, like the wife of the mother's brother from the father, seemingly is that which Rav Yehuda bar Shila was coming to include in his klal. Ask the Gemara 1 second. I don't understand. We just listed a whole list of cases that broke the rule, and you're assuming this goes with the rule. I don't get it. Is it a rule? Is it not a rule? If we're breaking the rule, we're not. So how do you know which is which? Explains the Gemara. We'll finish with this. The reason is this one has one kedushin. Hani adika trei kedushin loy mikaravlu. You know what's going on over here? In one of them, you only need one kedushin, and therefore it's going to be aser. Whereas over here, you need to have two kedushin. It's 2 steps away in order to get there, and therefore it's going to be mutter. We'll pick it up from Shalach Ram Mesharshi on the next year. B'siyata d'Shemaya.